Let me ask you about one that we've sort of grappled with this country recently, and that is the confirmation of CIA, now confirmed CIA Director Gina Haspel. I actually can't think of a more recent example where there has been played out in the public sphere such a profound debate on, frankly, the ethics of action in international affairs. On the one hand, those who say that Director Haspel's involvement in CIA, black sites where torture is alleged to have happened, were by definition disqualifying for her to be director of the CIA. Others saying that she was following legal instruction as a framework defined at the time, and by the way, she was not alone. So how do you sort of think about and parse that through, and how can that example be relevant for current students of ethics in international affairs?
So clearly it's hugely relevant to the discussion of what you do in a situation that, as Chris has alluded to, when the prevailing consensus at the highest levels and wherever you are working goes against judgments that you are able to make based on training, information, access to intelligence. And you are faced with the dilemma of whether you continue to support the policy or exercise a judgment and find some way to have a voice. In this particular instance and other instances, we were extremely critical of intelligence and policymakers who did not, quote, speak truth to power. So this has become the latest kind of injunction to younger people you need to speak truth to power. I think Chris and I have both struggled with the issue of how do you teach people to be prepared to speak truth to power when in situations like this where there are fundamental issues of morality, of actually strategic imperative, of self-interest. But how do you teach people how to speak truth to power without getting shot in the face? And I say that not lightly because there's two sides of this. On the one hand, there are people who have spoken truth to power and have ended up completely marginalized and are not remembered historically. There's some who have survived in various ways. Or there's the alternative of going along with the prevailing viewpoint. I think you're right that this case, in her case, encapsulated all of the tensions that were going on post 9/11. The fact that there was no resistance to the idea of torture, or so little resistance inside the decision-making and inside the actual operations, that there was such a sense of imperative to do something that would redound so badly to the United States, quite apart from the victims, but to the entire reputation of the United States. And there you have, it's not about her, is it? It is certainly about her in the sense of the confirmation process, but the reason I find this topic so fascinating for everybody in this room and everyone who comes to an international affairs school goes back to what Chris said. We try to train military officers, as you know, to be loyal to the Constitution, to disobey illegal orders. There is at least some familiarity with the fact that there will be predicaments. There's no tradition of teaching civilians that they are going to be up against these kinds of things. And we'll come back to this, I'm sure, but one example I'll use that I try to teach, I got to know Robert McNamara very well. Robert McNamara was racked by guilt for his role in the Vietnam War, for the fact that he knew that the strategy was failing, but he continued to work as Secretary of Defense and send people into combat and to die for a strategy that he knew was completely mismatched to the facts on the ground. This is not an isolated incident. He was just a celebrated person. He never recovered from. So when people say ethics is kind of nice, it's sort of a cosmetic, it's actually demonstrably true that your conscience is a living, breathing organism that you cannot mess with too many times before you become a broken person. That's the psychological aspect. And through the research that we did over a long time, looking at different cases, some from most from the 20th century, like Iran, the failure to speak up has been the source of strategic failure over and over again for the United States. So we cannot train leaders unless we teach them about this.